On this episode of AV Week, Warren Buffett looks to buy a distributor of AV products, looking at the diversity of the AV industry and getting into healthcare. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 433, recorded Friday, December 6th, 2019. The smell of money.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Peerless AV, driving technology through innovation.
And by
Extron, industry-leading technology backed by world-class support.
And by
Vadio, makers of the new NDI professional broadcast camera, the RoboShot 30E NDI.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, last time I saw her, she had long red hair. So my buddy Dawn Mead with a very cute, was that called a pixie cut?
Yes, it's pixie cut.
I like it. It's cool.
I'm growing to like it. It's been a challenge. I've tried to take down my ponytail about 17 times since I had it done. But yeah, it was a matter of necessity. I am currently handy-capable due to some shoulder surgery. So it was either this or just like crazy banshee hair with mats and knots, and it was better to cut it all off.
I understand. I probably would have gone the same way. So, also with us is, we'll stay in the Eastern time zone, Mr. Dan Gundry from Vistacom. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. I think you're going to go hair larger to
smaller.
Bigger, is that what it is? Yeah.
If you're not watching the video, that's actually fairly accurate.
Where are we heading now?
Because Peter Herr, who is just north of me in Chicago, is from Sure. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Jim. Glad to be here.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess we all four have short hair. That's fine. That's all fine. Yeah. Let's kick this off and get this going so we can get our weekend started. First article comes to us from our friends over at AV Magazine. The headline kind of says it all. Warren Buffett is bidding $5 billion for Maverick AV owner. The sage of Omaha says he understands the company's role as a middleman, but was outbid by investors at Apollo Global Management, whose offer was accepted by Maverick owner Tech Data. Legendary owner Warren Buffett bid $5 billion for the company that owns Maverick AV before being outbid. One thing he said he wants people to understand: it was our kind of business. It's one that you can understand, meaning that the moving products from point A to point B, meaning a distributor. Dawn, I want to start with you on this though. When folks like Warren Buffett, and yes, he is a name, and yes, somewhat of a celebrity when it comes to the financial industry, and one of the richest men in the world, he starts coming knocking on AV's door. This is something that we have been talking about for a number of years as more and more investment firms and more investment banks get into this industry, meaning they're buying up integration firms, they're buying up manufacturers, they're buying up distributors now. What does this say about the health and the future of this industry?
I think it's pretty clear that this is a further sign that after 75, 100 years, how old is this industry really? We've finally made it as an industry. People are realizing, because we are everywhere and so ubiquitous, now they're starting to realize, wait a minute, this is a thing. There are people that make money doing this. There is a knowledge bank, and there is a skill set that's involved, and that this is something that is worth investing in. For many years, I mean, just in my career, and I like to think I'm not that old, I've had years of my mother saying, what do you do for a living? I think she sells TVs or something, and people think I work at Best Buy. They don't know that we're an industry. And so now we're starting to get the cred from not just the IT world, but the greater world beyond just IT that has to work with us, that, hey, AV technology is a thing. It's a very specialized thing. It takes a lot of time and money and energy and brain power to do it. And we want to invest in that and be part of it because it's where the world is going. And if you look around, I mean, I've said it since I started in this industry. Imagine if you woke up tomorrow and there were no AV products anywhere. No telephones, because that's speakers and mics. televisions, those are monitors, of course. You could have IT, sure, you could have boxes doing computing, but you wouldn't have any inputs or outputs because you wouldn't have a monitor. It just is so entrenched in our life. And I'm really happy to see that this acceptance is coming, so that maybe in the future we won't have such a difficult time recruiting people to our industry and explaining to our parents and grandparents what it is we do for a living.
Yeah, one of our mutual friends, Rich Fregosa, still tells his parents that he fixes VCRs for a living. So there is that. Dan, when companies start like Mr. Buffett's and others start looking at our industry and start picking up the bigger fish, I guess, just to say this in the nice way, because $5 billion is nothing to shake a stick at. What does that do for the folks that are kind of farther down the chain? Maybe you're not worth $5 billion, but maybe, hey, you know what, you're worth $500 million. So what does that mean for those industries and for those, not those industries, but for those companies that are, maybe not as profitable, but they're still profitable as they're looking towards either to transition or to, for a succession plan to either pass it down to the next generation or to get out?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. You've already seen that, right? With I think it's Marlin that owns Whitlock, and HIG owns AVISPL. So it's happening with the largest of us, but we're also seeing it with other companies that are in that maybe $25 to $50 million annual revenue areas. You brought up an interesting point about succession, right? And I think that's becoming a real concern of those second, third generations is, hey, listen, we don't have that third generation that wants to take over or is ready to take over the organization, but it's a thriving business. It's a growing business. It's a business that makes sense to stay out there. What do? We've seen mergers and acquisitions. We've seen private equity come into the industry. I think it's good for the most part. I think the one thing that when I read the article, the first thing that popped into my head was we're waiting for a true disruption in the AV world. And we're going to speak about that a little bit later on. We start talking about diversity, at least the way in which Steve Greenblatt talks about it. But I think that what we need to be careful is not the right word, but aware of is that one of these outsiders is going to come in and really just blow up the way that we do business. And we need to be as ready and prepared for that as possible. And if that means partnering with private equity and private dollars to be able to do that, I see that as a good thing.
Peter, when it comes to some of these bids, and I mentioned the fact that Mr. Buffett was outbid, he had put the bid in for $140 a share, which was the company was valued as at $130 a share. The folks that won it eventually, Apollo, had eventually put their bid in for $145, and I guess most likely that's when Mr. Buffett said, "Okay, I'm out." Do bidding wars like this, or not? I shouldn't say bidding war, but conversations like this where you do have folks that are bidding and raising the prices. Do you think that hurts or helps our industry? Because sometimes there are tendencies for bids to go a little bit more than what they maybe should.
Right, like the overvalue issue.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, bottom line, I think these outside firms that are showing renewed interest or a new interest, I guess, if you will, in the industry is they're kind of following the money. I mean, they smell something, and I think they know the growth potential. They know that there's I love the note that he mentioned. He knows the business. He knows he understands it, but he has no idea about the products, and that's kind of the sideways view of it. But I think that the revenue potential, the growth potential is unsurpassed. I mean, just in my experience alone here at Shure, what we've been able to experience specifically in this segment that I work in for integrated systems products, it's been tremendous. It's been a wild ride for the 20 years that I've been here. And that the reason is that there's a lot of industry growth and potential, and, albeit some consolidation as well, but it's kind of like a rocket right now. And I think that the word is getting out, basically.
Let me ask a dangerous question here, and none of you can answer it if you don't want, or all of you can answer it if you don't want. If you want, is this the last time we've heard from Warren Buffett in our industry?
I'd like to say no.
Okay.
I
agree with you, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as Peter says, follow the money. And every time we get one of those great little forecasts of financial growth from AVIXA based on, all of their metrics, we're going higher and higher. And companies like, the large investment firms and people like Buffett, they follow the money. Although, Peter, I got to say, I resent the fact that you think we smell. But I hope you meant the smell of money, not
the smell of money is what I meant. Yes, exactly. Because we all love that, right? Come on.
All right. Well, speaking of the forecast, our next story comes to us from our friends over at Commercial Integrator, talking about the benefits and the kind of the gold mine that is the healthcare industry for the AV. Written by Zachary Como, and Zachary points to AVIXA's forecasting, and I'll read some of this. Now, understand that this is Commercial Integrator relying on AVIXA's forecasting. So if yours is different, you can take it up with AVIXA. But they're looking at the AV industry as a whole is supposed to, according to AVIXA, see a growth rate of 2.2% in revenues from the healthcare industry by itself. The U.S. government says that there should be a 14% growth between 2018 and 2028 to 6.6%. So truth, as a lot of times, is somewhere in the middle, most likely, somewhere between 2.5% to 6.5% over the next 10 years. Dan, we'll start with you on this. When you guys look at various verticals and you start looking around to ones that you guys can either delve into even more or potentially break into, looking at AVIXA's numbers and honestly looking at some of the U.S. government's forecasts, is this something where you guys look at where they think the industry is going, or is it your own internal kind of reporting and where you guys kind of decide this is the direction we need to head?
I think overall it's a mix that every organization has to evaluate on its own, because there's two pieces to it. There's one that the dollars and cents growth potential within a particular field, but you also need to make sure that your organization is set up for success at getting into and sustaining existence within a niche market like that. And while the article talks about healthcare, you can very easily talk about a couple of the other. You can plug, broadcast in for that. You can plug control rooms, virtual reality. You can plug a lot of different other niches into that. I think an organization that goes after the healthcare market, that really embeds itself and does a lot of the things that article talks about in terms of advisors that live and breathe it on a regular basis. You staffed up so that it. You really absorb and become a part of the fabric of that industry that you're supporting. There's not a lot of room to do that in multiple channels. If you're going to be really good within that one niche market, or two markets, or when you start spreading yourself thin is when you start to water down your proposition. But I think those companies that do it well and do it right are staying ahead of that commoditization curve, and they're finding real profitability, and they're finding loyalty among customers, which is harder and harder to come across. So I'm all for it. I think you need to make sure that if you do it 100% and you do it right.
Peter, when AVIXA comes out with this, and CDA does as well, and NSCA does as well, and those are just three industry associations I'm going to pick on. You guys obviously look at other government forecasts and other forecasters as well. You guys start looking at this, and let's pick on healthcare for a second, and they say that healthcare is going to blow up. Where do you guys start adjusting your resources? And you mentioned the fact that you work in the integrated systems market, right?
Right.
I know from having friends that work at Sure, there are other verticals that you guys touch as well. Entertainment is one,
Mm-hmm.
So is it something where there comes a breaking point where you guys, okay, you know what? We're going to dedicate an entire team to healthcare. We're going to dedicate an entire team to, UC. Or is it where you look at the systems that are being put in and the people that are putting them in and go, you know what? Yes, it's healthcare, but it belongs under integrated systems, right? Yes, it's live staging and events, but that's entertainment, right? So does it make sense for you guys to break out an entire segment like that, or just keep it all under one kind of overarching group?
We've done it a couple ways, actually. I think in our current state right now, where we are is, I think we're viewing healthcare as opportunistically, because I think a lot of our partners are are doing things where it makes sense. We've done some a few interesting things like case studies and stuff like that with some like teaching hospitals and stuff like that, where that kind of interaction and dialogue is necessary. But I wouldn't say it's a focus for us. And I don't know that we would necessarily, dedicate a whole team to pursuing one particular segment within at least our vertical. We've certainly done it in the past. I will say, like, when we tried to really, in the past, we've really kind of built out, not the entertainment side, but our, what used to be called actually personal audio at Shure, which was kind of like the consumer, B2C stuff for the earphones, the headphones, and even the podcasting mics. That a dedicated, segment or a business unit that really goes after that and tries to understand that customer top to bottom, is something that we have done in the past. But this article was just interesting because I felt like, and Dan mentioned it too, you really need to go all in to understand this customer and all the ins and outs of what it's about, if you're going to succeed and to gain that loyalty, because it's not something you can just kind of dabble in and be like, oh, I'm going to just be casual and today's healthcare, tomorrow's something else, because you're not going to be successful.
Absolutely. Don, put your integrator hat back on and your marketing integrator hat back on. Talk about what Peter just said there for a second. How do you get your teams? How do you get your salespeople? How do you get your sales engineers when you start looking at various verticals and go, you know what, folks, we're going to go after this. So like Peter said, you've got to get, put your nose down, your nose at the grindstone and really kind of figure this segment out. How do you sell that to your internal team?
Well, first of all, I mean, when you break into a new vertical like that, be it healthcare, be it broadcast, be it government and military, you need to have buy-in. You can't just unilaterally at the top or in the middle, wherever, make a decision that we're doing this vertical and everybody just has to be on board. You have to get the people excited about it. You have to get like I said, the buy-in to want to learn, because there is a lot of learning involved. There's a massive learning curve for government, for broadcast, especially for healthcare. About 10, 15 years ago, the integrator I was with at the time wanted to do a few healthcare projects. We can come in and we can do a boardroom. We can do a little conference room off to the side at the hospital where the executives meet or something. We could even put a little digital signage in a couple of the lobbies. That isn't a problem. Where we hit wall after wall after wall was being able to understand the needs of the internal parts of the hospital. You can do a couple of little surface projects as an integrator easily in healthcare and say, we do healthcare. But it's not doing healthcare. If you want to, like the article said, you have to know about special environmental tents around ceiling tiles that you're dropping to prevent, any kind of disruption in a sterile field. You need to know, if you're putting in touch screens or monitors, that they have to have the special biofilm stuff that they were developing back 10, 15 years ago when my integrator was looking at them, that will keep those sterile or safe for use with people with immunocompromised systems. You need to know about all the HIPAA regulations and all of the demands for privacy that are involved. If you're even going to put in, say, like a Cambridge or some of those other, sound masking systems, there's a lot more involved than just, I'm going to put up a TV in every patient room. There's a reason a lot of hospitals have those ancient regular CRT TVs in their rooms. It's because they haven't come up with the safe, available, affordable systems and companies that know enough about healthcare to come in and put those in. And as Peter said, if you go all in on a particular vertical and you learn it and become the best at it, I mean, yeah, you can make bank, but that's true in any vertical. Yeah. You just have to get that buy-in from your whole team to say, okay, we're going to really study this. We're going to find out exactly what we need to know on the HIPAA front, on the regulatory front regarding sterile fields, on the technology front. Peter works for a microphone manufacturer. If they were going to start manufacturing hospital quality microphones for surgery operating theaters, they'd need to know about, bug resistant plastics that they would use to extrude to make, you couldn't put it in a regular windscreen on a mic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But as I know firsthand from my recent surgery, they're using mics and speakers and cameras, little cameras inside your body on giant screens for robotic surgery. You have to be a specialty company to do that. So sorry, mom and pop integrators that I always worked for, but you're not really going to be doing healthcare. You might do a project for a doctor or a hospital here or there, but unless you're willing to get full buy-in and invest in education, and heck, maybe even hire a few people from that field that are tech savvy to bring in as part of your team, you're not going to be doing healthcare.
Yeah.
Or any vertical for that matter.
Or any vertical. Absolutely. That's actually a good place to start. Last story here comes to us from our buddy Steve Greenblatt, and the host of our show, State of Control, writes for AV Network and SCN about the AVIX's Diversity Council. This is an organization that's been around for about 1.5 years, 2 years now, and Steve does a lot of work with it. My buddy Kevin McLaughlin does a lot of work with it over in the UK. Alexis Lebroy, which I get to hang out with this week in D.C., does a lot of work with it as well. Charmaine. The idea here is to get more folks in the industry that do not look like the industry 20 years ago. Be very specific how I say that. I've made no bones about the fact that I'm a big dumb American, right? I am, I live in the Midwest, outside of St. Louis, and I somewhat self-deprecating, but I don't know what I don't know when it comes to the rest of the world. I also don't know what I don't know when it comes to being a person of color, or a woman, or someone who is has different sexual preferences. I don't know that because that's not me. I have friends that are that way. I listen to them, but I like this diversity council because it opens up those conversations. One thing, and Peter, we're going to start with you on this, honestly, because as a manufacturer, you guys kind of have a broader sense and kind of an overarching view of this. One thing that Steve writes in here is that no matter the background, interest, or role that is being represented, quote unquote, the Diversity Council encourages interaction, understanding, and the acceptance of all members despite different beliefs, makeups, and abilities. How do we have those? How do we start those conversations internally in our companies, but also with our clients, right? How do we have those conversations? Is it a council like this, and then we take what they've talked about further, or is it something where we actively internally with our folks and our employees say, you know what, guys, this is something that's important as we kind of grow and expand and show the next generation that this industry is inviting to all people.
I think you nailed it right when you mentioned growth, because I mean, obviously, as a 95-year-old audio company that I work for, that I've been here for 22 years, I mean, there's a way that things have been done, and there's the people that have been doing it for that long. But now I'm one of the old timers here, and I know that the key to our future as a manufacturer, as a company that continues to innovate and build on success and continuously improve, and all those tenets that Mr. Schur kind of indoctrinated, and kind of put together in terms of what his goals were for this company, is to grow and to be inclusive, and we're doing more hiring of it's kind of the move to like where society is going in general, in terms of just like it's reflective of that. It's reflective of trends in society in terms of embracing diversity, embracing change, embracing. You have to kind of roll with those changes, or you're going to be left behind. There's no way that you can, hire a workforce that will move you forward until you, really choose to, make those adjustments as an organization. And I think it mentions, busting through the status quo in the article. I mean, we know that, without growth and innovation, we're going to be left behind. It's just as simple as that. So you have to embrace these societal changes and these shifts in thinking and shifts in culture that have been so widespread in the past 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Don, I spent a couple days in Washington, D.C. With our friends at Future, and some of those folks work for SCN and other Future magazines. They put on a show this week in D.C. called The Video Show. Kind of the successor of what that used to be called the government show, or the government video show. I was honored to host a panel or moderate a panel with a guy that I hadn't met yet in person, Ernie Beck from Baltimore, who has an organization called Integrate Baltimore, but also Christopher Hope from the Loop Lab out in Boston, and LaToya Lewis from AVNation. All of these folks, all three of these groups, are actively recruiting young people that maybe not have an interest or an exposure to AV, and saying, hey guys, there's an entire industry here that is looking for young people, that are looking for folks who are tech savvy, and then they train them and get them connected with jobs. There are inherent hurdles, though, and some of those hurdles include stuff like transportation, and other hurdles actually go back to some pretty basic, biases that we have in this industry. And I think it's kind of sad and unfortunate, the fact that we have an entire group of folks, we have an entire generation coming up under us that are diverse, more diverse than our generation was. They don't care, by and large, your background or the color of your skin, or what kind of food you have. I don't care if you're vegan or if you're a carnivore. Doesn't matter, right? How do we get those folks into our integrators, not just in New York and in LA and DC, but also in St. Louis, right? And also in Boise, Idaho?
Well, it's not a simple solution, because if it were, it would already happened. It's one of those things that as integrators, as end users, as manufacturers, we have to make a dedicated effort towards bringing some of these folks in, whether it's different races, different cultures, different ethnicities, genders, gender identities, even different generations. We're coming up on a period of time when there are 5 or more generations in the workplace at once. And from that front, you have to say, you guys have heard me say this on podcasts about a number of topics in the past, but we have to say, look, we can't do this just the way we've always done it. We can't, the 6 most dangerous words, that's not how we have done it. The 7 most dangerous words. It's a case of, you have to just be willing to make changes. You have to be willing to welcome these people in. You have to be willing to work with organizations like AVNation and Integrate Baltimore. And I know one of the tenets of me on this show these days is I can't say who I work for in the greater DC area, but I will say this: the organization I work for is very invested in making sure that we have a diverse workplace, both gender, race, creed, ethnicity, all of the identities that we use to define people. They make a concerted effort to bring in and diversify the workforce throughout the enterprise, and especially, in the different sectors, the IT sector, the AV group. We all have this as a major talking point or thinking point when we're looking at making staffing decisions. So we recruit from the military, retiring military, who are pretty diverse. We also work, being right here in the DC area, we work with Integrate Baltimore. We work with those folks and donate old equipment to them to help do with some of the training. We've hired some of their folks. And so it's up to integrators and manufacturers and end users to say, hey, this is important to us. This is important to the world at large. And we're going to make active steps to be part of it. We don't want to be the ones that are left behind on the dusty shelf of history that may or may not be on the right side. And it's like, well, they meant well. We're looking back at the 60s and the civil rights movement to begin with. Well, they meant well, some of them, but they just weren't part of it. You want to be part of the diversification of our industry and all industries to better reflect the world we live in. And I think if you make active changes that way and look at things like, my own company, not as part of their diversity efforts, but as part of their green efforts, they set up ride shares. They set up commuting pools. If you have your integration firm in the suburbs and you have some great talent in the inner city that may not have public transportation, hey, put up some bulletin boards and say, look, we're looking to recruit in this talent pool that we know is there. Let's set up some ride shares. Let's figure out ways to get them here and be part of our company. Or let's open a satellite office that can take advantage of the public transpo. So there's a lot of solutions. You just have to be willing to look for them and be willing to implement them.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, you'll have the last word on this as our resident integrator today. How do we get folks? What are the steps or what are the processes to get folks from 18, 19-year-old interest, level 1 tech, into an organization like Vistacom?
I think we're starting to see it happen more. I don't want to say naturally, but I think it's just occurring because the workforce is becoming more diverse. The commonality of AV in the everyday life. Dawn kind of talked about it earlier in the conversation. I think we're starting to see more people interested, more younger people interested. What I really liked about Steve's article, and I don't want to pass this up, was that there was a focus on the positivity and the benefits of diverse thinking and diverse teams, as opposed to the word diversity out there, with goals and quotas and those types of things. We're spinning the word into this is the impact it can have positively on your organization, different life experiences, different paths, different mindsets. And when we start talking about AVIXA's change to be more experiential, we're developing systems and solutions for people that are as diverse as our workforce and teams should be. And I think all of that is starting to tie a lot more together. So while we shouldn't be we should still be making efforts, I think it's also happening a lot more naturally as well.
Well, I think to Dawn's point, she mentioned the fact that we're getting into a point here where we're going to have 5 potential generations in the workforce, especially if the baby boomers don't stop not retiring. So that's a whole nother,
Okay, boomer.
Thank you. All right, that'll do it for us for this week. Thank you all so much, Miss Dawn Mead from AV Dawn and our AV social show. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for having me, and as always, I'm glad to be part of AVWeek.
How do people get a hold of you if they are so inclined?
Of course, you can always find me here on AVNation.tv, as Tim said, hosting the AV Social Show with my lovely co-host, Kelly Perkins. You can also find me on the Twitterverse and the Instas and all the other social medias at AVDawn, and around LinkedIn and more official places, Dawn Mead. And if you happen to be in the DC area, I work for the government sort of roundabout, and I can't tell you any more of that or I'd have to kill you, but I'm sure I'll see you at Infocom Show or a few other places.
I love you.
Love you too, Tim.
Mr. Dan Gundry, thank you, sir. How do people get a hold of you or Vistacom?
D Gundry at VistacomInc.com, Dan Gundry in Twitter world and LinkedIn. And it's been an absolute hoot. Thank you very much, Tim, and especially to Dawn and Peter as well.
Absolutely. And Mr. Peter Herr, due north of me, go Bears.
Go Bears.
We're recording this on Friday, the day after they have beat my buddy Matt Scott's Cowboys. So, how do people get a hold of you or Sure?
Well, our systems Twitter feed is at Sure Systems, and that's probably one of the hipper ways to get a hold of us. You can also reach me directly at PAHERR, and happy to connect there as well on the Twitters. So thanks so much, guys. Have a great weekend.
Absolutely. Actually, if you're going to ISE, you will get to see Peter. You'll also get to see me, hang out with you guys there. And if you're in the UK, London area, Sure just opened up a brand new experience center.
Yeah,
there in London. So
it's pretty slick. I haven't been there. I'm excited to go.
Yeah, I haven't either. It'll probably be late next year sometime before I get back to London.
Awesome.
I think Chris did that on purpose. He opened it up right after I left. I'm not going to take that personal at all. But for me, don't follow me. As I mentioned, I will be crowing about the fact that the Bears beat the Cowboys on Thursday Night Football, and they are above 500 again for the first time in almost since the first of the season. But go by the website if you would, please, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others. I mentioned ISE. We will be heading to ISE in just a little bit over 2 months here. Hang out with Peter and the folks at Shure and all of the other 80,000 AV professionals that will be hitting Amsterdam one last time before we all head to Barcelona in 2021. Also, while you're at our website, go by our supporters section. These are the folks who help us financially, help us bring you AVWeek and ResiWeek and coverage of ISE, and Sure is one of those, and we thank them for their support. So all that and more at AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That is all the time we have for AVWeek.